There are many things you can do with your time at this time on Saturday, and you chose to come here. So thank you for that. And I want to thank the organizers of the festival for asking me to come and share with you and learn from you a little bit about the ocean, it's really important and interesting that the theme of the festival this year is the ocean, because the ocean, as I'll try to convince you, is really very important for life on Earth, for all of us. So let's get going. And yeah, so this is the plan I have for you. I'll just throw out some basic facts about the ocean, because I know that some of you don't work with the ocean like I do, some of us do, so it's good to introduce you to some facts. And then the key thing about the ocean is how to sustain it, how to make sure that the ocean remains alive, the ocean is healthy, sustainable, teeming with life through time to infinity. That is the challenge for all of us. Make sure that this important natural system is there, not only for us, but for our children and grandchildren and their own children and grandchildren. So that's a big thing. So then I do the framing, and then I give a number of examples of my work, my colleagues, my students, postdocs. First talking about harmful fisheries subsidies, and I'll explain that. Then I talk about high seas management and why that is important. Some of you have been following the UN effort to try to get an agreement on how to sustain life in the areas beyond national jurisdiction. Yesterday they concluded, and we don't have an agreement. The world cannot agree, which is a big problem, right? So I'll mention that. Then, of course, I cannot do this talk without talking about climate change. Climate change is all over us, right? So I have a couple of slides just to link up a bit. Each of these will take several hours to actually dig in. So I'm going to give you a few points here and there, hopefully, just to link you to the ocean. So this is my first slide. Did you know that the ocean covers 70% at least of the Earth's surface? 70%. So this is a lot, right? I like to tell my students, if you are scoring 30% in this room, all of you here, if you were scoring 30% on average in your exam, you would never be in this room, right? So if you mess up 70% of anything that is important to you, you are in trouble, right? So we cannot mess up the ocean. So that's the first point, okay. Then did you know that the ocean produces, estimates 50% of the oxygen on Earth? So this simple fact made me to give a talk with the title, "The Ocean is Our Life." And I mean it, right? Just think about that. Without the ocean, there will be half of the oxygen in the world, and we will have only half of the oxygen we need. Have you ever seen a half human being? No. So half oxygen will not be enough. You will be gone. So the ocean is our life just because of oxygen. And there's a lot more, right? Did you know that the ocean absorbs around 30% of all the carbon we emit? So if you just have a straight line function, that means that the ocean is saving us from 30% of the mess from climate change without the ocean. Just think about that. Even with the 30%, see what is happening around. You heard about the UK, droughts in the UK, droughts in the US. Where you never heard about droughts. It's almost like you're talking about Ethiopia, huh? That everybody knows about droughts. So this is spreading. And so that's a huge function that the ocean does for us, which we don't sell from the market, but is very important. So I'll come back to market values and market values later. Now, the ocean is actually home to 95% of life on Earth. 95%. In fact, I talked about 70% of the area of the ocean surface. If you take the volume, we're talking about 99%. The ocean is 99% of the volume of area living things thriving. You know, we live on Earth, we're hanging on the land. The birds, a few of them fly, that's all. But you can go deep in the ocean, hundreds of meters deep, thousands, and there's still life in there, right? So that is where the bulk of life is. So some of us say, what do we call this Earth? We should call it the ocean, the ocean planet, you know. It's all ocean, right? It's all water. Yeah. Now we are on the Pacific here. So the Pacific Ocean is over 5 times wider than the moon. We haven't been to the moon, but we heard a lot from the Apollo people since then. And that is a lot. The Pacific Ocean is actually the largest ocean body in the world. And so just gives you, I have some numbers I don't know whether you can read. There's some width from one part of the world to the other. So that's big. So the ocean is big, it's important. But because it is big, it doesn't mean that we cannot mess it up, you know. At the same time, because it's big doesn't mean we cannot protect it, to give you some hope, right? People say, oh, you know, Rashid, what can I do? I'm just a person. I say, you know what? Even the mighty ocean is made from little drops of water. Huh? So whatever each one of us can do, we can actually together protect the ocean. So be hopeful, okay? I don't want to leave you thinking, oh my gosh, this is too big. I can't do anything. You can do a lot. So we will see that. Now, the value of the ocean is not just because it's big. It gives us a lot of things. I've mentioned oxygen, carbon sequestration, but food, fish. How many of you have eaten fish today or this week? That's almost all of us, right? You know. So it's jobs also. 260 million people we estimate in the world actually gets some income from, and I'm talking about wild fisheries, wild ocean. I'm not talking about inland or agriculture, which is big here. This is the wild, 260 million. You know, I have a little story for you. In 2016, I had the privilege of giving a talk at the State Department right after President, you know, okay, let me be more precise. It was John Kerry who gave his talk and introduced President Obama then. He gave his talk, then Leonardo DiCaprio gave his talk. And the fourth person to give a talk is this little guy standing in front of you, little Rashid. How did I get there? I don't know. Yeah, so I was sitting there, Obama is sitting, we're smiling at each other. And then I said, you know what? You all remember when Obama became president, within 2 years, that young man started becoming gray, right? You remember that? It was in the news. And I said, if not for these jobs, he would have been grayer. Now, all these jobs are in large developing countries, the Philippines, China, Indonesia, Nigeria, right? And without these jobs, young people will have nothing to do. And, you know, the social and economic problems will not remain in these countries. They will land on the tables of world leaders, including Obama. And he'll be gray, and all of us in the room will be grayer, you know, I said. After that, somebody came to me, but you never get gray. I do, you just don't see it, right? And we take about 100 million tons of fish out of the ocean. Actually, that's quite a bit of this. 100 million tons, just to give you an idea how much biomass that is. And most of this is legal, but there's also illegal catch, we estimate that. If you assume that one mature cow is 1 ton, which is a reasonable assumption, that means every year we're pulling out 100 million mature fish cows out of the ocean. Let's think about that. It's more than all the cows we slaughter a year. I understand it's about 60 million cows that the whole world feeds on a year. So that we take that much. And to me, that should make you think. That's a lot of food, which is good, a lot of dollars, a lot of jobs, as I said. But it also means we have to ask what is happening to the ecosystem, right? What system, even the mighty ocean, can sustain each year taking 100 million equivalent cows out of it. So So just to give you a little bit, it is very important essentially. That's what I'm trying to say. And there are many other services that we get from the ocean that I'm not even touching at the moment. Now, but how are we relating to the ocean? I have a bad story for you here. Unfortunately, all the data, most of the data I've seen, our relationship with the ocean is not proper. We are not treating the ocean with the respect it deserves, you know. We are overfishing, we're taking the big fish, we are destroying the habitat. If you look at down there, we're putting a lot of garbage in the ocean. Some of you saw a talk, I understand, earlier, it was yesterday, divers who went down deep and they asked the diver, what did you see? He said, garbage, garbage. So a lot of that plastic, all the oil spills. So lots of things we are doing which will not serve us well, unfortunately. So we are not relating properly with our ocean. And when I talk about the ocean or marine ecosystems, it's not just because I care about that, which I do, but actually all these impacts comes down to people at the end of the day. I have been around the world, and what fishermen tell me, fishers, I like to say, is that they used to go half a day, fill their boat. Now they go for a week, and they can't get half of the boat, right? So that, to me, is the evidence then. It happens around the world a lot. So is that guy saying, is that all the shrimp I get? And this lady down, it's a very important message coming from. We know that environmental refugees are increasing around the world. It's a lot of forced migration. People just cannot live in their places. And I tell people in the European Parliament, anywhere I get a chance, I say, human beings don't just sit down. When conditions are terrible, we don't just sit down and die. We move. That's the story of the world migration. This is not an African thing or a Latin American thing or Mexico. That is what human beings have done through history and will continue to do. So this I'll link back to. That means we all have to do our best to make sure that people can live where they are reasonably, right? Because that's how you reduce this pressure to move. That connects to my, now I'm getting into the big points in terms of framing. This is one of them. We have one global ocean essentially, and also one humanity. I like to say this especially when I go to places where people think only they matter. I say, look here, we have one ocean, you know, so you cannot say Canada, you manage your fisheries well, your ocean well, and you go to sleep. Even Canada is no island, you know. Even Chilean oceans are no islands, you connect to the rest and so on. So we have a big global problem that only coming together can help us solve, you know. So that is one thing. I say the fish, microplastic, they don't respect your borders. The fish doesn't need visa to move, right? Sometimes I want to be fish, you know. They just go where they go, right? I was in London when they were talking about Brexit. I said, you guys can Brexit as much as you want. French fish, English fish, they don't care, they go, right? So this is really important, right? And at the same time, our markets are also very connected. Chilean salmon, you can find it almost everywhere, right? The markets are connected. Namibia, they catch hake within 10 hours, it's in Europe, right? The fish get visa immediately to get to Europe. And Africans, So there you go, right? So that's that. So markets are connected, but our governments are not. And that is clearly an issue. If you have a problem at this scale and you don't have the system to manage that problem at that scale, then you are in trouble, right? This is why we have the UN system. We have all these intergovernmental things, but they don't have any power. All the power rests in the states. We just heard that the UN agreement for the high seas has just collapsed. They couldn't agree. If one country doesn't like it, we're in trouble. So that's it. How do we match the scales? And these days I talk about, or we almost have to think of managing the ocean just like geographics and map makers, cartographers think. I'm fascinated by maps. They're amazing. You can just put the whole world on your one sheet of paper. You see the whole world. Yeah? Isn't that cool, right? But if you are looking for this room on the global map, you are not going to find it. The scale is too large. But if you blow up the map enough, you will find this place. And it will be the place where the geographer tells you it will be. You are not going to find this theater in South Africa. No way. It's going to be here. So the local maps are talking to the regional maps, national map, and the global map. And that, I think, is how we have to think about managing our ocean. We do local, national, and we do global, and they have to link and talk to each other. So then you don't give subsidies in China, and then they come to the waters here in Peru or in the Galapagos and mess up the place because you're messing up yourself, right? So that kind of thinking. And that's all. So we have to think and act both locally and globally. You know that saying. Think globally, act locally. No, that will not do. You got to do both. You have to find a way to link up with the global effort. So that's one. Now, this beautiful cover, huh? Usually, since I published this book in October last year, I will have a copy and I'll say, look, it's real, I have it here. But you know what? I left my copies on my table and ran to Chile. So I have no copy to show you. But it's real. That's how it looks. And the title of the book is Infinity Fish. And it's a very hopeful concept. It's optimistic, and that is, in general, my posture about life. And infinity fish, let's see, what else do I have to say about this? Yeah, so this is the blue economy and how the infinity fish fits in. In the first place, the idea of calling this book Infinity Fish started years ago. I got invited to give a talk in Namibia, the national fisheries there. And in Namibia, fish is very important, maybe like Chile. 10% of GDP is fish. But diamond is also important. And they actually interact on the water. They do some diamond mining offshore. So I go there and I tell them, you know what? I give a talk like this. I tell you, fish is more valuable than diamond. And the room just sat up. They've never heard that. How could he say that? I had two reasons. The first reason I said, fish is a renewable resource, right? If you manage it well, you can keep going to the ocean to take fish year in, year out, to feed yourself, to do your economics and culture and all that. If you manage it well, it can go on forever to infinity. And anything that gives you benefit, even if the benefit is small, but it gives you benefit year in, year out to infinity, if you sum it mathematically, the benefit is infinity. Therefore, infinity fish, right? That's one reason. Now, think about diamond. Diamond is not renewable. You dig a ton of diamond today, you are never going to be able to dig that ton of diamond again. It's gone forever. Forget about what they tell you in the popular palace, right? It's gone forever, right? So, that's one reason. And then I tell people, I know you will tell me, I'll take the money and invest it and it will give me benefits forever. There were three ministers sitting in front. I said, but you know what? I know your governments are all running deficits. You never save anything. You blow it. So, but at least the fish will be there. It's like a trust. Each year you can go get and go, right? That one you can just blow it. So that is the basis on that. The second reason is that fish is valuable for many people. Diamond, by and large, is valuable for a few. In Namibia, DBS, that's virtually all the diamond mining. They hire a few hundred Namibians, and essentially that's it. Okay, they earn some foreign exchange. But then, fish is valuable for many. I have a question for you guys. How many of you have seen raw cut diamond in your life in this room? How many people have seen that? Aha. How many of you have eaten fish this week? Oh ho ho. You see the point? Fish is valuable to almost all of us here, right? In that direct way. So that is the point. And then the idea of infinity fish is We, the current generation, we should aim to achieve, we should aim to pass on a healthy ocean to our children and grandchildren so they too can have the option to do the same, right? You cannot force them to do it, but give them the option. And they may learn from you and give their own children and grandchildren the option. And if we continue this, we can have infinity fish. So that's the basic idea. And this picture, two quick points. When we go to the ocean, we do two things. We, the people, we do two things. We take all the good things, the things we want, and then we pump all the bad things we don't want into the ocean. From the ocean, good things come. To the ocean, bad things go. And if we don't do this taking and pumping out wisely, we're going to kill that. You know, you can have a dead ocean, right? You can actually have it with climate change and ocean deoxygenation and the overfishing and the pollution. Who knows? We got to work hard to avoid that. So, because this is a common heritage of mankind, we have no right to destroy it for the future generation. So that is essentially the theme of the book. But then I go deeper, and this is like chapter 2 in the book. The whole thing, the way I frame this is the way we value nature, more broadly, but the ocean in particular. The way we conduct the valuation is crucial to our ability to achieve infinity fish. If all we care about is the things we catch and sell in the market and forget all the other great things the ocean does for us, it's not going to work out well. So valuation is very important. So here I quickly look at economic theory, and actually economic theory says that we should value anything that people care about, that are useful to people. So actually my conclusion is that the theory is broad enough if only we apply it well. But do we apply it well? There are challenges. There are real challenges. Difficulty in determining all the things people value. Right? I don't know all that people care about the ocean and the fish. I did some random questioning on our campus. I just meet you and say, hello, how are you doing? Do you care about fish? And almost everybody, oh yeah, I do. I said, why do you do that? And some said, oh, well, I eat fish, I enjoy that. That's a common thing. Oh, it's businesses for our fishing companies, jobs and so on. One person blew my mind. He said, I love fish. Why? Because I love the smell of fish. How do you value that, economists? Yeah. Yeah, how do you value that, right? So there you go. I love the smell of coffee. I can pay for that, actually. So that's something like that, right? But we don't pay for this good stuff. So there's that difficulty. Some things are simply invaluable. There's a lot of uncertainty. And in the modern world, there's a lot of misinformation and untruths. This bothers me a lot. When you see somebody who has gone to Harvard stand in front of the podium and just tell people plain lies. I mean, it just breaks your heart. You see that. Highly placed people, right? And this fits into everything we do, because if we cannot agree that, I was giving a talk, I think, in the US, and I had my glass of water. I say, you take this and tell them. You tell them, look, this is a glass of water. They no, it's a banana. And then you tell them to eat the banana. You know what? They don't eat it. They just walk away to the next lie. That is a problem for science and all that we do. Then you have the rubber. When the rubber hits the road, this is really where the problem is. People care about the dollar value, and this is a challenge. So there are lots of things there, including people say, you know what? The seals are eating all our salmon, so let's go after the seals so we get more salmon. So I asked them, what will you go after next, after the seals? And what next? I mean, the seals and the salmon, they know how to live together. They know how to balance, right? The seals are clever. They know, if they empty all the salmon, they will starve, right? So they know how to do it. So yeah, there you go. And these are all challenging. What really blew my mind is I looked at the top environmental economics journals, and I did a search and said, how many of them do anything other than non-market valuation? Less than 1%. It's all about the market in economic journals. Non-market values, nope. So that's what you see there. But the little good news is when we divided the 10 period into the early 5 and the later 5, we saw more non-market valuation coming up. So maybe there's hope, but this is what we actually end up doing, and that's where the problem lies. So some of the work, I give you a bit of our work. This is work we do with our indigenous people in British Columbia, First Nations Fisheries Council of British Columbia. So I've been working with them. We're trying to find a way to capture the number of things they care about their fish. Salmon, sockeye salmon is a special fish for traditional indigenous people of British Columbia. So we developed together a very simple approach to capture their values. And this is what step one, we identify the different values and benefits derived from the fishery. So we go into the community, we do a survey, we sample people and they tell us what they care, so that. Then the second thing we do, we give everybody $100. We say spend it on, in this case they identify 6 things, spend it on the 6 things. So they allocate the $100. That's step number 2. And then step number 3, we normalize this and then we peg it against the price of salmon in the market. And then we work it out. And what did we find? 9.5 times the value of a pound of salmon in the market is what they assign as the total value of the fishery. So this is a pilot and we are expanding this. The goal is to have dollar signs that when they go to capital, when they go to parliamentarians and policy ministers, they listen to them because they are talking in dollar terms. So that's the kind of work we need to do more, I believe. Yeah. All right. So now, this is the last framing thing. What I have discovered over these years, over 20 years in this business, is that a lot of our policies, not intentionally, most likely, they actually work to reinforce negative feedback from nature to people and people to nature, which is quite counterintuitive. You think that the regulation is there to encourage positive feedback, but that's not what we see. So here I'm going to use subsidies and the high seas to kind of explain a little bit what I mean here. So I don't think we should put up any policy that leads to negative feedback from people to nature and nature to people. Then the policy's purpose is defeated, right? You want to do the positive feedback. And what do I mean by that? Let's take subsidies, for example. Our group, we've been doing subsidies work since the WTO, World Trade Organization, got the mandate to discipline harmful subsidies, environmentally harmful subsidies. This was in 2001 in the Hong Kong Doha round, they got that mandate. And they've been struggling for over 20 years, no agreement. The world cannot agree. Some countries will not agree. They have all sorts of reasons to slip away, right? Last June, they actually reached an agreement. And we have provided a lot of the data that is used by countries. We built a global database. I have numbers for Chile. I won't tell you number, they're in the report, right? And so globally, that's what we see, about $35.4 billion in total. And subsidies are like everything. They are not all bad. You can actually have good subsidies that help to sustain our fisheries. If we are monitoring and control to stop illegal fishing, that's a good thing, right? But if you are paying fuel, part of the fuel bill, people are going to be able to fish more. That is a bad subsidy, right? So, and the big things there are the bad subsidies, you know. They are the bulk of it, you know. So, and this I do developing countries and then high income countries, right? The first one is if you have China as a developing country, that's the picture you get at the bottom, the division between developed and developing. But if you do by HDI, Human Development Index, China moves to the top, and China is the biggest subsidizer in the world, right? And at the same time, it's a developing country. So there you go. So we do this just to make it clear. The subsidies come from countries that have the money to subsidize, you know? essentially, and it's the developed countries. All right? This thing here, very important study done by Anna Schobauer, my PhD student. What we did, because when I talk about taking subsidies, politicians will tell me, we give subsidies because we care about the poor. We care about the small fishing communities. That's why we're doing it. I actually had a big back and forth with the Speaker of the House of Assembly of Indonesia and the British House of Lords, a meeting of the G20 countries. So, Rashid, we will continue to give subsidies. And I say, why will you do that, sir? Because we want to help our poor fishers and so on. And at that time, I didn't have this data. So all I could say is, if you need a foot soldier to fight poverty, I join you. That's what my life is about. But giving subsidies that take down the fish stocks that the poor depend on is not the way to do it. But I didn't have the data. So when I got my PhD student, I put her on and we did this. See what you're seeing here. Only 20% of the subsidies we found go to small-scale coastal fisheries. 80% goes to the big industrial fleet, right? So it's just talk, and this is one of the things I say. You are aggravating, you are worsening the negative feedback, because the coastal communities, if you're in West Africa, parts of Latin America, Southeast Asia, fish may be the only animal protein you have in your food if you're a coastal person, and we are disadvantaging them, giving the subsidies to the big ones to take the fish and walk away and leave the communities hanging on the last fish. You don't want to do that, right? So that's the second point. And so I have this thing here. I say that harmful subsidies sabotage the UN development goals, not only on the sustainability side, but in a number of dimensions. Number one, they reduce the biomass, they mess up the ecosystem, think of bottom trawling, and affect the food security of millions of people around the world, their jobs and so on. Disadvantage small-scale fishers, which you don't want to do. I don't want to do that. Then disadvantages developing countries where actually the food is more needed, right? In many of the developed rich world, our problem is how to not be obese, right? Whilst people are malnourished. So you don't want to take their fish away. And the next point is the gender issue, and this is really important, right? Most women who fish small scale. It's the guys who do the big thing. And then you give all the money. So you are aggravating gender inequality in a world which is so loaded with it already. You don't want to use public funds to aggregate that. I saw a report that looked at gender equality, legal gender equality, not everything. Just gender, just legal. And only 6 countries, they found that women and men are equally treated legally, not religiously, not economically, not culturally. So, and then you use the taxpayer money that we can use for so many other things to do that. No, don't do it. Next one, if I have money to spend, I'll rather put it on processing, for example. Add value to the fish you catch rather than take the last fish, right? Doesn't that make sense? Why will you do that? The youth don't start with a big boat or industrial boat, so they are disadvantaged. We don't want to do that. And I like to talk to the fish sometimes. I whisper to the fish. I ask them in my sleep, I say, what do you think of us people, the way we treat you? And I think the fish will say something like this: you guys are simply crazy. You are dumb, actually. We are here, we feed you, and what you do is use your public funds to destroy our habitat and destroy and pollute the place. Oil and gas, $5.4 trillion a year. That's the IMF estimate of the subsidy, the oil and gas. The fish will say, you guys are so dumb. You have big brains, but you don't use it well, huh? That's the fish talking, right? Oh, man, yeah. So we've been in this fight, and in December, my group, we managed to get about almost 300 scientists to come together to write a letter in Science, which is 300 words. So when I presented this to the Director General, that's her there. Most of you will know this already. That's Dr. Ngozi Iweala. Amazing. She was finance minister in Nigeria. try hard to fight the corruption, right? She's now the head of the WTO, the first woman to be there. And this gentleman there, Ambassador Santiago of Colombia, they were the leaders at the WTO that shepherded this. And so we were asked to hand this over to the DG so she can share our letter with the team. So many people credit our science as the main support of this decision that was made in June last year. But we are now assessing what does it really mean. A number of people in the world, will it really matter? What they agreed to, will it matter for the fish and conservation? So the story is not done. The WTO itself knows that they haven't got a complete agreement. In fact, they have put it on for further negotiations for the next meeting next year. So there's still more work to be done. But at least 164 countries managed to agree on something. That alone, to me, is something, right? Because see the other thing on the high seas, they couldn't even agree at all. So yeah, that's a milestone. But more work needs to be done to get a proper complete. When I presented to her, I told her, please, Madam Ambassador, this is serious stuff. There are 300 scientists produce a letter in science of 300 words, so it was one word per scientist. That's how serious, valuable this is. And she had a good laugh, of course, yeah. So let's go to the high seas. I don't know how I'm doing with time. I'll try to speed up a bit so we get time for discussion. You know, the high seas, what are they? Every country like Chile, the UN agreed in 1982, the UN Law of the Sea, that Chile has the authority to manage the fishing in its waters from the coast to 200 nautical miles into the ocean. And that is true for all coastal countries now. But this is not the whole ocean. Actually, this is just 1/3 of the global ocean. The high seas is 2/3 of the global ocean. And that is not under any country's jurisdiction. So we call the fish there the orphans of the ocean. Huh? They don't have parents, right, out there. And that's the high sea. The thing is, what you do in the high sea affects also what happens in your country waters. The fish, remember, they don't need visa. They go in and out, especially the big migratory pelagics like tunas and the like. They really, one of our students discovered that one tuna type actually goes through 53 countries' waters by the time they finish their lifetime. 53. More than many human beings will ever do. Yeah, go to 53 countries, right? So that's what we're talking about. And so a number of us have been looking at this very seriously, and we have come. Some of us are advocating for closing fishing completely from the high seas, because a lot of the fish go in and out. And if you do that, you can actually catch the fish cheaply. You pump less carbon. The fish value is distributed better. Only 5 countries take over 60% of the catch in the high seas, because only they can go fish there. China, Taiwan, Spain, and the like. You are not going to find Togo. You are not going to find Ecuador. Is not there. I don't think so. So that kind of thing, right? But if you do this, you might get a lot of benefits according to our papers that we have. And in fact, it appeared through our work, the creation of high seas regeneration zones. I call them the creation of fish banks for the world, where when the fish get there, they get peace, not being chased around by trawlers and purseaners and longliners. They relax, they grow better, and then animals are interesting. One is, so this is, I'm thinking of time, but there's a lot in each of these. Before we came to that conclusion, we tried to estimate how much of the fish we catch are from species that live all their life in the high seas, right? And very little, less than 1%. Most of those we catch go in and out. That's why closing the high seas could be good, economically, biologically, climate-wise, and socially. All right, and then what do I have next? Yeah, these things I've already talked Chris Costello at the University of Santa Barbara, they are also in this business with our group. And then Enrique Sala. Enrique Sala is Spanish, actually, yeah. Famous Enrique Sala with the National Geographic. And we have all been studying this, and we all came to the conclusion, if I own the ocean, tomorrow I'll close the high seas from fishing and also from deep sea mining, actually. Yeah, I'll do that. I think it's a wise thing to do. And go, let's see. Are you tired? Yeah. The thing doesn't want to move. It will move. Can you move it from there, please? Yeah. So this is a little thing one of my students did to just illustrate the point I'm making. So I told you 5 countries take 64% of all the value from the high seas: China, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, and Spain. And so if you close the high seas, the fish will come in and small countries will also get it. I like that part of the story a lot. And this is just to tell you what happens. So you close that part, you can fish in your country waters, which are better managed, because you don't just come into Chilean waters and start fishing. Somebody will ask you a question. In some countries, you just blow off your vessel, right? You don't dare to do that. If you do that, then the animals prosper there. And what do? It becomes dense. Yeah. The fish will jump. You see that? That was too fast. The fish will just jump onto your boat cheaply. Yeah. Oh, come on. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing we're animating, right? Yeah. So there is that possibility. And I just wanted to say, this is not a pipe dream. We already have a very large part of the high seas closed already. This was one of the last things John Kerry and Mr. Obama managed to push through before they finished their term. And it was amazing. This is the Ross Sea of Antarctica. They managed to actually close this. China and Russia were very much against. I don't know the magic they did to get them to sign last minute, and so we have that close. So this is part of the negotiation. I was hanging on the wall there. They can't see me, right? Yeah, so that was good. And then, yeah, October 2026, they actually signed an agreement. 2 million square kilometers of Antarctica is now blocked away, the Ross Sea. You cannot fish there. They go after krill and all that. Before, with climate change, we need to watch out to protect places before we come in. And the beautiful thing about the politicians, when you push them and they get something good done, they are so happy. So after they see them, they are all signing on and celebrating. But before that, it was hard. They're afraid of the voters, So don't give up. If you have something that you really believe is good for your country or your region or the world, just keep pushing. That's our mantra in my group. Just keep pushing, Yeah, so that is that. And actually, this negotiation they are doing, we did another science letter led by Rebecca, the first one up there, urging them. So our team will be very worried now that the agreement has not succeeded. These were the core authors, but we also got more people to endorse, where we are urging these people to come to an agreement. And they haven't come to an agreement. So we have work to do, right? Yeah. So finally, a few slides on climate change. I said I couldn't finish this without climate change. It's happening everywhere. There's still a minority who still argue otherwise, but for most of us, it's too clear. The average temperatures are higher. Last year in British Columbia, in June, British Columbia was hotter than West Africa. At one day, the temperature in Lytton was 51 degrees centigrade. Yeah, 51 degrees centigrade. Can you imagine that? And that town was actually burned down by wildfires. It was so hot. So, and then, okay, there's the impact on the animal, but how we also fish impacts that. And I will have to stop now. Time is running out. But just to drop climate change, because I couldn't finish without saying something about that. That is the end, sir. The chair was, yeah. So that's the end. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Thank you.
I heard in one of your previous talks
Yeah.
that you accused fisheries to be losing money,
Oh, yeah.
and they save themselves because of subsidies.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is that a fact?
Oh, yeah. And
So-
it's not only me. There are other researchers too have shown that.
Yeah.
The World Bank has shown that. The way it works is, if you look at the total revenue the fishing sector brings forth, and you calculate the total cost, and you subtract them, you see a deficit of $67 billion. If you just look at their revenue and their cost. The thing that closes this gap is that 36 billion or so. And this 67 is actually the whole, right? So you have to come to zero and then you have the 35.4. And that's what we see. It's a lot of fishing businesses will go. The Sala paper that I did is, I'm a co-author there. We also found that if we take out fishery subsidies, 54% of the fishing grounds of the high seas will not be profitable. Again, 54. So if you take out subsidies, it's like you are closing 50% of the high seas. How about that? Help me to do that and we'll save the ocean. Yeah.
You mean a big point of that is subsidizing fuels?
Absolutely. That's a big one, actually. Yeah. Because they go far. And you know, the high seas, we take about 8% of the total catch in the high seas. So it's large, they have to search, they have to go all over, burn carbon, fuel. So the subsidies is what helps them to do that, otherwise it will not work.
How do you manage a politician that says, I can't stop high seas fishing, I will lose such and such $1 million, etc. And my workforce will be jobless, you know? How do you conquer that?
That's a really difficult question because it's a good one because really most people will agree that what we are doing. I had in the Canadian Parliament, I made a talk and a politician said, you this guy, you telling me to go to my constituency and tell them I'm taking their subsidies? Are you crazy? You know why? There's election the next year. So this is a real problem. And how do you deal with that? I think we need pressure. That's how we get our politicians to do what they need to do. We need journalists. This is why I talk a lot to press and TV. You need society. You need young people. I go to high schools. I tell the kids, look, you have more power than you think. Take a paper and write to your member of parliament. Write her in your shaky hand. And you don't know how much power you have. You know, it's like your daughter or son telling you, Dad, you can't do that. Oh my gosh. You pull back. So we need all these forces to come into play to be able to push forward. Yeah.
Okay, above your head,
Yes.
there's a fish.
Yes. Oh yeah. Okay. It's right there.
Yes. That's a non-market value fish.
Yeah.
How you spoke about one drop to help the ocean. Does the man or the woman who sculpted that fish join this force of underlining the non-market value of fish?
Yeah. You know what? These days I like working in interdisciplinary groups. It's not only about the science. So one of my projects is called Ocean Canada, and there are 100 people in there. We have a movie-making professor and his team. We have artists. So there was one play that I saw, an artist showing how a whale is pulled out of the water and how the whale is struggling and fighting, and they had to come with more people and they punch it. Man, the room was just blown away. So that thing really went straight to the hearts of people. You could feel it, right? So I think this is the kind of thing we need to do, to take the science to the people in a way that they can react to, right? When we were talking before this, you talk about those NFTs, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, these NFTs, this is a fake world they just make, and And people are buying into it and paying. The last famous person to buy was actually Melania. And she bought it and lost a lot of money. I don't know why. People were making money until she showed up. So that's a word which is imaginary, a world. And these artists, the creators, have managed to reach people in a way that they actually put value on it. So I think that's the kind of thing we need to do to really get more people to understand.
You mentioned in your speech deep sea mining.
Yeah.
I want to remind my comrades that the government of Chile has asked at 3 or 4 UN conferences this year to ban deep sea mining altogether.
Yep.
Emmanuel Macron in France said okay.
Mm-hmm.
Spain joined, in spite of Spain's ocean interests. They said okay. Australia is on the same boat. Yeah. But of course, the International Seabed Authority, which has its main offices in Jamaica, has promised that in July of next year they will publish the rules.
Uh-huh.
But the rules they have to publish are enmarcadas. They're framed under the main ideas of the founding of the International Seabed Authority, which means everybody will have a right to. But they imply they would have a right to perhaps have mining.
Okay.
So the movement against sea mining is very important today, and it's of course Russia,
China,
Czechoslovakia, Poland, China, Cuba.
Yeah.
Have formed an alliance
on the other side.
China is a big deal in this, and the US also. So what would a deep sea mining, do to the health of biodiversity in the sea?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this kind of question in terms of the rush for the blue economy. Every country is talking about the blue economy. They want to go to the ocean. That's going to be the next economic frontier. As if this is the first time we are discovering the ocean. The ocean has been there all along. And we've been blue economy forever, actually, right? So this idea that it's a new thing and there's money to be made is part of this deep sea mining. And to your question more specifically, what worries me is that if you look at the services and the goods we get from the ocean, you can divide them into two. One are those that depend on life in the ocean, right? For example, you need the fish to have a fishery and all that comes with it. You need whales to do whale watching, so they depend on life in the ocean. You have carbon sequestration, animals and algae doing the job. Then you have the other things that do not depend on life in the ocean. Shipping, oil and gas and all those things. The problem I see, and I'm doing a paper on this, so you are getting an early edition of this paper, actually. So the problem with this is the things that depend on life in the ocean, they come a lot with many non-market values. The values we don't sell, it's not easy to count. The other things that can thrive in a dead ocean, shipping can go on in a dead ocean once it's water, right? They don't care about the life. In fact, they might even make more money because they don't have to negotiate with the whales, which is terrible. So those ones are more market-oriented. You can count the dollars that your shipping business brings in, right? And so you are going to have this dichotomy. And what will happen? People are going to price the dead ocean stuff because you can count them and ignore this, which will be terrible. Because then we can end up with the dead ocean. So that is, and seabed mining, deep sea mining is a typical example of that. And we have to. So I kind of, it's almost like banning fishing in the high seas, you ban mining in the high seas, right?
Yeah.
And when I say this, I say it with a smile, you know. I gave a talk in Seattle, banned the high seas, and somebody came to me and said, you, this guy, what can I do with you? You tell us to close 2/3 of the ocean with a smile. What can I do with you, right? So yeah, but it's serious stuff. And we don't know enough with this deep sea mining. And I don't even believe it's economically that profitable. It's all a pipe dream, as usual. Oh, the gold rush. Then they go there and find there's no gold. By then it's too late. They've messed up life in the ocean. So
The last question is, are you hopeful?
yeah. I am hopeful. I mean, because really, I don't have an alternative, right? I mean, do we give up? You guys are all here because you're hopeful. Otherwise, my God, our world will go to hell, right? Already is going with all our efforts. So remain hopeful. And another thing that gives me hope is when I look back, historically, actually, human beings have been able to do some good stuff, right? It's not all... You know, you remember those days where I couldn't be in the room. We have women and men working together. So the fights have made some progress. So that gives me hope. Finally, you know who is watching at me that I have to keep hope alive? It's Nelson Mandela. I can think of Nelson Mandela lying in his grave and say, you, this Rashid, you mean you lost hope? What have you seen? What have you seen? Get up and do the job, right? So there is a lot of hope coming from many angles. I'm optimistic. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.